Hi everybody, welcome to Jin's Wall Street News. According to the US Department of Labor, the number of Americans claiming unemployment benefits increased from 239,000 to 247,000 in the week ended May 31st. The U.S. Census Bureau and the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis announced Thursday that goods and services deficit tumbled 55% in April from the previous month. 10-year Treasury yield rises to 4.39% as investors are concerned about the labor market ahead of the jobs report scheduled to be released at 8:30 a.m. Friday. For the US stock market, S&P 500 fell 0.53% and the Nasdaq Composite dropped 0.83%. On Thursday after the bell, Broadcom announced financial results for its second quarter fiscal year 2025 ended May 4th. The company expects its Q3 total revenue and AI semiconductor revenue to rise 5% and 16% respectively quarter-over-quarter. According to the US Department of Labor, the number of Americans claiming unemployment benefits increased from 239,000 to 247,000 in the week ended May 31st. It sounds alarming. In addition, the number of Americans receiving benefits after an initial week of aid decreased from 1,907,000 to 1,904,000 in the week ended May 24th. But it doesn't look beautiful. The U.S. Census Bureau and the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis announced Thursday that the international trade deficit in goods and services tumbled 55.5% from $138.3 billion in March to $61.6 billion in April. Exports increased 3% from $281.1 billion in March to $289.4 billion in April, while imports decreased 16.3% from $419.4 billion in March to $351 billion in April. 10-year Treasury yield rises to 4.39% after the U.S. Department of Labor reported the weekly jobless claims at 8:30 a.m. Thursday, as investors are waiting for the jobs report scheduled to be released at 8:30 a.m. Friday. Rising the interest rate due to the weak economic data makes investors nervous because investors are now questioning whether the U.S. government deals with the huge government debt successfully or not. So if the jobs report looks ugly, then the 10-year Treasury yield soars and the US dollar index tumbles. I'm gonna run away from the US stocks for a while. The US dollar index dropped to 98.35 after the weekly jobless claims were reported, but fortunately it's rebounding ahead of the jobs report. For the US stock market, S&P 500 fell 0.53% and the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 0.25%. The tech-heavy Nasdaq dropped 0.83%. It looks something like a double top, but it's too early to call. We have to look at the US jobs report, 10-year Treasury yield, and the dollar index very carefully. On Thursday after the bell, Broadcom announced financial results for its second quarter fiscal year 2025 ended May 4th. The company reported $15 billion of revenue for the quarter, up 1% sequentially, above its previously estimated revenue of $14.9 billion. Operating income decreased 7% from $6.26 billion in Q1 to $5.83 billion in Q2. When it comes to the guidance, the company expects current quarter's revenue to be $15.8 billion, up 5% quarter over quarter. Shares of Broadcom fell 4.2% on Thursday in extended trading. Broadcom President and CEO Hock Tan said during the conference call, quote, Q2 semiconductor revenue was $8.4 billion, with growth accelerating to 17% year-on-year, up from 11% in Q1. Driving this growth was AI semiconductor revenue of over $4.4 billion. Turning to our Q3 outlook, we forecast AI semiconductor revenue to be $5.1 billion. Now turning to non-AI semiconductors in Q2, revenue of $4 billion was down 5% year-on-year. Non-AI semiconductor revenue is close to the bottom and has been relatively slow to recover. Overall, we forecast non-AI semiconductor revenue to stay around $4 billion. Okay, this is the end of today's news. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.